everyone. Wayne Motts, the President Emeritus and Historian at the Gettysburg Foundation, with my friend and co-worker here, so to speak, our partner, Chris Gwinn, the Chief of Interpretation and Education at Gettysburg National Military Park. And can you guess where we are? First of all, Chris, Sarah's got it lined up, our video team here, and you can see the Pennsylvania Memorial in the background. We're right on the Taneytown Road, just south of Gettysburg and south and east of the famed angle for Pickett's Charge, and we're in front of the William Patterson farm. And this farm, here during the time of the battle, lived in by William Patterson, about 40 years old, his wife, 8 children. They're going to flee, of course. This will be one of the early hospitals for the 2nd Union Army Corps here. There'll be burials around the property, and the park got this property and had it rehabilitated. And I am psyched for our behind the scenes at Gettysburg. This is going to be our 3rd installment. So you got to go over to YouTube channel for the Gettysburg Foundation and look at the Warfield House where we went behind the scenes, David Wills where we went behind the scenes and did some archaeology, and now we're at the William Patterson for our April installment of the behind the scenes at Gettysburg National Military Park with Chris. The park team, what an excellent job in rehabilitating it. Chris, tell us a little bit about it. You were telling me how you were an intern here at the park, or you just had started when they were doing the rehabilitation. What's some of the history on when the park gets this and what you know about it?
So, you know, the early 2000s, the park embarks on what we call our battlefield rehabilitation program, which the intent of that is to take a landscape that had evolved in some very significant ways since the battlefield, or since the battle, and as much as one can, turn the clocks back to 1863 so that visitors have an understanding when they come here of the ebb and flow of combat, the factors that influence the battle, and also the agricultural setting on which the battle took place, right? And the Patterson House is one of those homes that you've probably driven by it 1,000 times and never really noticed it. But as you were pointing out, Wayne, it's in a really interesting location. So it's kind of inside the fish hook. Behind us, as Wayne already pointed out, is Cemetery Ridge. I can see the Pennsylvania Memorial. I can actually see the monument to the 1st Minnesota. So we're just behind the lines of the Army of the Potomac on July 2nd and 3rd, 1863. The Taneytown Road is right behind us. You can see cars passing it. And then actually just behind the camera, not too far away, is where our visitor center is today, Museum and Visitor Center. So back in the early 2000s, I was a seasonal here, and this is when the Park Service was really embarking on that big rehabilitation project, which involved removing non-historic woodlots, returning orchards to the landscape, and taking a lot of the park buildings and preserving them, stabilizing them, and then rehabilitating the exteriors. And that's something I think that visitors don't understand. So we're behind the Patterson House right now. That's just one of not dozens, but hundreds of buildings that are within Gettysburg National Military Park that the Park Service has a responsibility for. And, you know, this house I think is fascinating because it's one of the log structures on the battlefield. And it was 2008 they started to work on this structure, and like a lot of the buildings in the battlefield, it had modern development all over it. So the park team stripped that away, revealing the 1863 building. And when we walk inside, you're going to see, I think, a really fascinating example of a log, of a timber structure, hand-hewn, that's on the battlefield park today. When I came here, they were removing a lot of the woodlot that would have been behind us. They were reintroducing the Patterson orchard to the landscape, and they were doing a lot of significant work on the building itself, including some archaeological work that I got to take a look at, which it was a great time to be a ranger at the battlefield as this park is really transforming in a pretty
and we've said it before, Chris, in our for the viewers in our behind the scenes videos, is good stuff takes time. So it does. You got to understand this stuff takes time, and that's okay. It's okay that it takes time because the preservation has never been better here at the Gettysburg National Military Park. You know, I tell everybody I'm a kid driving up at the Peace Light Inn, best dancing in Gettysburg, but there's a hotel up there.
Well, you know,
you're not a peach orchard. So getting this stuff back takes a lot of time.
It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of money, and it's very much a collaborative effort. So, you know, to your point, I remember when I started here, there were car dealerships on the first day's battlefield, there were power lines along park roads that today are much more characteristic of their 1863 appearance. And again, it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of professional expertise. And I think this house here is a great example of that. When you go inside, you'll see some of that preservation work that was done.
And of course, you know, on behalf of the foundation, we're proud to be your partner with you on many of these projects. So it's proud to say that the foundation members, the supporters, the team helping the park, a good partnership in trying to get that back. So we should say that what we know, this was about 79 acres during the time of the battle. We're on one little corner of it. Yeah. It appears that William Patterson gets the initial part of this in about 1849, and it looks like this log home is constructed sometime after Patterson gets this 1849 acreage, and then he gets additional acreage. So he ends up getting 49 acres first, and then he gets 30 acres for the 79. And we know this because he puts a claim in after the battle for damages that are done here. There was a barn that sat right across the street from where Chris and I are standing. The barn was oriented north-south, houses is east-west. The barn was taken down many, many years ago, but we also know that that's a field hospital location. This is a field hospital for the 2nd Corps, but as we were talking about, at least in my car when we came over here, is that this was right up against Chris, the artillery line. So unfortunately for these poor people, artillery overshots, even on the 2nd day of the battle, certainly in Pickett's charge on the 3rd day of the battle, are coming right over here. So it's really pretty close to where the line is. So most of the folks that are being cared for got to be taken away
elsewhere.
Got to be taken elsewhere. Patterson puts in a claim for the property. There's different numbers for the claim. One of these claims is over $2,900 that's here, and he does not die until he is over 80 years old after 1900. He dies on Steimer Avenue here in Gettysburg, buried locally. That's here, but once again, rehabilitated. And we've told everybody, folks, it's rough sometimes when we go into these houses. My first time inside Patterson, so let's take a look. Yeah.
Before we do go in, I'll just make my kind of standard announcement. It's normally not accessible to the public. You can certainly visit the farm, but obviously we're allowing access to the inside, to the foundation and your viewers to get this kind of behind the scenes look.
If you do visit it, you just got to be very careful. If you're walking along out here or something, you got to be very careful on this traffic because this is a busy road. And we should say, Chris, during the Civil War, this would have been a
road too.
This is one of the supply routes for the Union Army, the Taneytown Road. We're just down from General Meade's headquarters, just south.
Yeah, just down.
Just south from it. All right, go ahead. Oh, wow. So this is actually in a different state than than Warfield. We visited earlier. The Wills house, of course, is finished. We saw some archaeological stuff. So we've seen these homes that are done in different conditions, Chris.
And again, this is not ever going to be some place where we house staff the way a number of buildings in the battlefield are.
Yeah.
This is not going to be something that is curatorially stable to bring artifacts in. This is meant to be a placeholder on the landscape. So again, that if you're exploring the battlefield, you get a sense of the configuration of the land around Gettysburg, the homes of the people that live here. What I think this is a great example of is our preservation efforts. So when you look around you at some of the exposed woodwork, the beams,
let's get
even these
look at this.
These replacement beams. So when we came in, the house was in a fairly poor condition, and a lot of the fabric in the interior had to be replaced. And the attention to detail that the park team was able to provide, down to even hand-hewn logs.
So this is a new beam, Chris.
That's a new beam.
And this is an older beam now.
Clearly an older beam, clearly an older beam. Yeah. And then some of the woodwork around us here.
But like the older beams, now these have obviously been worn down over time, but you had where the axes cut.
Absolutely. You can tell they've been done by hand.
Yeah. And then the mortar, I see. So when the park got the house, was it covered outside? Or it
was covered outside, and so they stripped away the modern exterior, revealed the timber structure underneath. Okay. And then they covered that up with the board and batting outside that you see today.
Okay, all right. And then they fill in the mortar when they can't. Boy, it's
exactly
really, really great Great shape.
Really great condition. And again, it's always, to me, I always imagine the family here looking out the window, seeing the Taneytown Road, seeing troops coming up and down.
And so right up the window, you'd have right up into where General Meade's headquarters would be, just north of where we're standing.
And today, it's right across from our park maintenance facility. So that's one of the landmarks if you're traveling along Taneytown Road.
So Chris, we think that Patterson had these children. I mean, there might have been as many as 10 people in this house, obviously living upstairs.
Yep, it's 2 stories. Yep.
We've been into a couple different houses. The Warfield house, small, relatively small. This one, not so big either. Just a lot of folks that are here. So you've got 79 acres that you've got farming going on all around here, where this is. Once again, Patterson, an older name. We've got Patterson Farms around the battlefield. So we've got some.
And obviously, as you mentioned earlier, this whole property is taken over as a field hospital following the battle, and you mentioned, with its proximity to the Union line, a lot of artillery shots during the second and third day of the battle. So again, difficult to imagine what conditions would have been like in 1863 at the height of the battle.
Yeah, I mean, the Patterson's getting out, then coming back, this place is going to be once again wrecked. And you've got the claims. We're so grateful, I think, as historians, that we've actually got some claims. Now, in most cases, these folks weren't remunerated or compensated for these claims, but we've got what they lost in a lot of these cases and what was used. He also says the barn was used, which would have been a temporary hospital, obviously the artillery. And there is a mention of an account from a New Jersey artilleryman here, would have been behind where the lines are, that there might have been some overshots here from the original signal guns, from the signal guns on July 3rd, 1863 for Pickett's charge. The Elliott burial map has. Now, they show some Confederate graves. Now, whether or not Elliott actually got that right, are they Confederate or Union? But there were graves also around.
I think that all this highlights some of the challenges of history, but also some of the processes of history, right? So, unfortunately, the Pattersons, they never wrote a book about their experience. They never wrote anything in depth about what it was like to live here. And so, with this farm and with the Warfield farm, that's a great example. You have to depend on these records that are not necessarily from the pen of Patterson, but give color to his experience. So the Elliott map, the damage claim file, things like that, to fill in kind of the blanks of his story. And again, as long as we have this structure, as long as we have this building, we'll always be able to tell the Patterson family story for visitors who come here. It's one of the great things about having the preserved park.
I think people that come visit us, they think, and rightly so, we've got monuments out here erected that show and mark positions of the men that fought here. We always want to make sure everybody knows there were 2,400 civilians in Gettysburg, not counting where we're at, here in Cumberland Township. Many of the young men were off in the Army, but life went on. It went on before the battle, it went on after the battle, and went on, today, and continues. And so these folks are trying to piece together back a life where they don't have, as I tell everybody, you don't get a FEMA loan.
No.
When
your insurance company's not kicking in.
Your tornado goes through today and you've got everybody helping you. In the Civil War, your family, your church, your community, these are people that come together to try to help you. And you got very little outside help to try to put this back together again.
Absolutely.
To try to get some sense of a lifetime back. And then meanwhile, you come back in your yard and you got people buried in your yard.
Absolutely.
Until the reinterment.
And even the process of filing a damage claim, it was very bureaucratic. It was not something that was easy to do. And you can see that going through the damage claims, the back and forth, the challenges that these people who lived here had following the actual battle. It's in many ways a very different kind of battle, right? It's a battle to recover their lost property, to repair their damages, to try to rebuild their lives from the shattered wreckage of these 3 days of combat.
Yeah, and many of these folks retained attorneys, to try to help prosecute these claims as much as they could. But for us as historians, it's a great insight into what was lost, or what kind of damage was done, what were the places used for, because Patterson has to swear a deposition where he talks about this was a hospital, here's some of the things we lost. But you've got a Union Army of over 90,000 people. You've got thousands of people around here trying to take things out of these different things for the use of. And one of these claims is interesting to read. It's do they have any receipts? And the answer is no. No one was very fortunate forthcoming in giving receipts. Is what the claim actually says, Chris. Yeah. And so you can imagine what you're going through to get that. But the William Patterson House, folks, along the Taneytown Road here at Gettysburg National Military Park, rehabilitated back to what it was at the time of the Civil War, one of the many projects that the Park Service works on, and we're just grateful to have Chris with us today. We're grateful, and once again, we want to thank and shout out, they're not here, but the number of team members that made this possible, you couldn't fit inside this building or upstairs.
You're talking historic preservationists, craftspeople, you're talking archaeologists. Right. It takes a whole team to keep the battlefield looking like it does. Never mind to take something like this and turn the clock back to 1863. Yeah. And of course, we couldn't do it without the support of the Gettysburg Foundation and the members of that organization that continue to support our work here.
Yeah, that's all you over there on there. And we want to say, we talk a lot about unsung heroes here at Gettysburg, and we tend to focus on the unsung heroes that are during the battle. After the battle, taking care of this place when it becomes a national military park in 1895, all the way up to today, there's a lot of unsung heroes, and you just named who they are, and they're not getting any recognition, except on the Chris Gwinn, Wayne Motts video.
There you go.
Today, they are going to get some recognition, because that's the reason why we've got something so great here. We hope all the viewers enjoyed this segment of Behind the Scenes at Gettysburg, behind the scenes at Gettysburg National Military Park. We really appreciate it. Be sure to follow us on YouTube, and make sure to follow us as well. Subscribe on YouTube, follow us on the channel for Facebook, and get more of this great content. Once again, we're grateful. Chris, thank you so much for allowing the foundation to come in here, being with us, making commentary, and thanks to everybody who made this possible. We hope you all enjoyed this Behind the Scenes at Gettysburg video, and stay tuned for more.